Hi, everyone. I'm in chapter 18 in section 2, I think it is, 2B on manufacturing cost. And there are a lot of definitions in here and things that you honestly need to know, especially for the exam. And part of it is causing a little bit of confusion. So I wanted to point out a couple things and make sure that everybody's okay. Now you want to notice in the beginning here under manufacturing costs, they've got direct and then overhead. Okay, so the way to think about this, and these are, big broad categories. You could have something special that was direct that for your business. And when they say direct, that means it's traceable to a unit of a product. Okay, so if you were making guitars, that the wood in the neck would be a traceable cost. Okay, the overhead, like electricity, all the utilities, depreciation, the building itself, okay, those are all overhead costs. Those cannot be traced to one guitar. Okay, so we put them in a big pile and we allocate it back to the units. Okay, so here they talk about direct materials. This is usually really straightforward to someone. This is definitely a manufacturing cost. Okay, so it's a product cost. All right, it's something that you wouldn't have if you didn't manufacture guitars, right? So that's a direct material cost. And then for direct labor is also a product cost. It's a cost of manufacturing. It's traceable to the guitar, like say each guitar takes so many hours to make. Okay, so that's how, and they say here, these change a little bit all the time, an integral part of the finished product, a significant portion of the total cost. In other words, if you, like here they've got wages of janitors who clean the factory are not direct. Okay, they're actually not direct because you can't trace it to you can't trace it to the guitar itself. Okay, so these would be considered indirect, an indirect cost, and a factory overhead cost. Okay, so if it isn't direct, if it's related to the factory and manufacturing, and it's not direct, okay, then it's an overhead. It's literally the definition. So costs other than materials, direct materials, and direct labor, okay, are factory overhead, also called factory burden, okay, sometimes called manufacturing overhead. And the thing of it is that notice that this is direct materials and direct labor. If we have indirect materials, those are a factory overhead. Indirect labor is also a factory overhead, okay? So these are the factory overhead costs, and notice everything here has the word factory in it. Taxes on factory buildings, insurance on factory buildings, depreciation on factory plant and factory equipment. Okay, heating and lighting the factory. So those would all be overhead costs. Okay, and then they've got guitar strings, janitorial wages, all of that other stuff that goes into making a guitar would be there. Okay, and then the other thing that's causing, the other thing you need to know is the difference between prime and conversion. And this sounds like, well, who cares? Well, if you're ever talking about this stuff, you want to know that the prime costs are direct, all right? Whereas conversion, just think of conversion as what it takes for material to turn into a product. So we take material and we add labor, direct labor, and factory overhead. Okay, so conversion costs are direct labor and factory overhead. And then there's one more piece here. Product costs versus period costs. So a product costs are manufacturing costs. Okay, we can do that. Okay, product costs are manufacturing costs, direct materials, direct labor, factory overhead. Alrighty, and then period costs are selling and administrative costs. And you want to think about those big categories on the income statement. That's really what that refers to. Okay, like two big categories of operating expenses on the income statement. That's what those are. So what did I want to show you? So down here, this is what was goofing people up. These are product costs. direct materials, direct labor, and then all these things for factory overhead. Depreciation on the factory. If we had depreciation on equipment, that would also be a product cost. Now for period costs, non-manufacturing costs, anything to do with selling expense, okay, which makes sense. And then administrative costs, expenses down here, they've got depreciation, office building, and that should say office equipment. Okay, if it's manufacturing equipment, then it's a product or a manufacturing cost. Okay, just to make sure that we're clear about this, there's a lot in this chapter, so please continue to ask questions whenever anything doesn't make sense. Okay.